2 years ago, I began forgetting simple things. Names of people I saw every day. Dates I used to remember easily. I even opened the refrigerator looking for my keys. At first I took it with humor. I thought, it's age. It's normal. No one told me otherwise. But what I didn't know is that there was something more. A silent mistake. A common, invisible habit that was stealing my memory without my noticing. Day after day, I did it as part of my routine. And meanwhile, my mind grew slower, more confused, as if it were fading little by little. It wasn't until I spoke with a specialist that I realized it wasn't only the passage of time. It was about what I was doing, or failing to do, without knowing it. And it hurt to discover that many other people like me are making that same mistake, believing it's all part of aging, when in reality, it isn't. That's why today, I want to tell you my story. Because understanding this mistake can make the difference between aging with clarity or gradually losing the memories that give your life meaning. What I'm going to share with you is not a magic formula nor a trendy remedy. It's an uncomfortable truth, but a necessary one. And if you stay with me until the end, I'm sure you'll walk away with a reflection that could change your life. Before we begin, I want to get to know you a little more. Tell me in the comments, how old are you and from which country or city are you watching this video? Now then, let's go back to the very beginning. The false idea that it's normal to lose memory after 65. For a long time, people have said that losing memory in old age is inevitable, that forgetting where you left your glasses, repeating stories, or not remembering a name is a natural part of getting older. That belief is so entrenched that many older people simply accept those lapses as part of the process. But that idea is dangerous. And I know it because I believed it myself for years. And I'm not the only one. Rose is 68 years old. She had always been an organized woman. She loved making lists, preparing everything in advance, remembering important dates. But a couple of years ago, she began to notice that something was changing. She forgot little things, where she had put the phone, which day she had to take a certain pill, what she had eaten for breakfast that morning. Nothing serious, at first. When her daughter mentioned that she seemed more distracted, Rose replied with a smile, "It's normal, my love. I'm already old." But it wasn't normal. It was common, yes. It happened to many people her age. But that didn't make it natural. What no one explained to Rose, and what many still don't understand, is that those little lapses, when they become frequent, shouldn't be ignored. They are signals, warnings from the body, and the sooner you listen, the more you can do to slow the deterioration. The problem is that most people let it slide, and by doing so, they lose a valuable chance to act in time. Cognitive decline doesn't appear from one day to the next. It arrives in silence, disguised as innocent oversights. It begins with small, almost imperceptible details. But if no action is taken, over time it becomes a constant fog, one that erases faces, dates, names, memories, even entire parts of your story. And that is the most painful thing, because no one warns you when you cross from simple slip-ups to the threshold of something more serious. So I want you to engrave this sentence. No, it is not normal to forget everything. It is common, but it is not natural. Accepting forgetfulness as an inevitable part of aging is, in many cases, the first mistake. And now that you know this, it's time to talk about the second one. The silent mistake, living on automatic. There's a mistake many people make without knowing it. A mistake so common, so silent, that it doesn't even seem like a mistake. But it is. And it is living on automatic. After 65, many people retire from work. Their routines change, and life begins to be quieter. At first, that calm can feel like a well-deserved reward. Sleeping a little more, watching television, going out for a walk now and then. But little by little, without realizing it, we begin to do the same thing every day. We repeat ourselves. We become predictable. And unintentionally, We stop using the mind as before. Routine, when it isn't accompanied by mental stimulation, can be one of the worst enemies of memory. That's exactly what happened to Richard. He was 73 years old when he retired. He had always been an active man. He liked puzzles, reading about history, listening to classical music, and having long conversations with his friends from work. But when he stopped working, everything changed. He spent the first months resting. Then his day became a repetition. Wake up, have breakfast, watch television for hours, have lunch, take a nap, walk for 15 minutes, and go back to the screen until night. He stopped reading. He stopped writing. And over time, he stopped thinking actively. His conversations became short. Sometimes he didn't remember what his wife had told him the day before. When his granddaughter asked him for help with a history assignment, he went blank. And it wasn't because his memory suddenly failed. It was because his mind had gone years without proper nourishment. What happens to the muscles also happens to the brain. A mind that isn't used gets rusty. It loses strength. It loses agility. It loses life. We think resting is enough, but rest doesn't replace mental movement. Learning something new, solving a problem, making a phone call, having a deep talk, reading a book, all of that keeps the mind awake. The mistake isn't resting. The mistake is living on autopilot, repeating without thinking, letting days pass without challenge, without novelty, without mental demand. And the worst part is that many times we don't even notice, until it's already late. So if you feel that all your days are starting to look too much alike, if you've stopped learning new things, if you no longer have conversations that make you think, this is the moment to spark that flame. Because your mind doesn't turn off because of age. It turns off from neglect. And you still have time to turn it back on. The diet that contributes to mental decline without your knowing it. When we talk about memory, many people think only of the brain, of mental exercises, of reading, of thinking more. But there's something very few consider, and it influences us more than we imagine. What we eat. Yes, food can be medicine or slow poison, and many times without knowing it, we are feeding forgetfulness. Peter is 72 years old. He had always been a cheerful person, with a good memory and a great sense of humor. He was one of those who remembered everyone's birthdays, names, and dates. But over time, he began to feel different. It was hard for him to concentrate. He forgot simple words in the middle of a sentence. He felt his head clouded at times, as if he were walking inside a fog. He attributed it to age. But the truth is that his diet was playing a key role. Peter loved sweets. He had the habit of eating something sweet after every meal. He also loved processed meats, ham, sausages, bologna, all kinds of cold cuts. He hardly drank water, but he always had a soda or store-bought juice within reach. What Peter didn't know is that this combination, excess sugar, ultra-processed products, trans fats, was inflaming his body and his brain as well. Because yes, there is something called silent inflammation. It doesn't hurt, you don't notice it, but it affects essential functions. And one of the first to deteriorate is memory. When the body is constantly inflamed by what we eat, the brain doesn't function clearly. Concentration decreases, attention scatters, mental energy runs out faster, and lapses become more frequent. It's not about stopping eating tasty food. It's about understanding that what we put on the plate every day either nourishes or weakens our neurons. Peter understood it when his doctor asked him to make a few changes. More fresh fruit, more vegetables, whole grains, less sugar, fewer processed foods. At first it was hard, but after a few weeks, he noticed something curious. He had more energy. He remembered things better. His head felt lighter. You don't need to become a nutrition expert. It's enough to make a few simple adjustments. Swap an industrial dessert for a piece of fruit. Swap a soda for water with lemon. Swap processed meats for a portion of fish, eggs, or legumes. Your mind, just like your body, is built from what you eat. And if memory is a delicate plant, food is the water you're using to water it. Sleeping poorly, one of memory's worst enemies. There's an activity we do every day that, although it seems simple, has a direct impact on memory. Sleeping. Sleeping well is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And without good rest, the brain doesn't function as it should. Because when you sleep, your body rests, but your mind works. While you sleep, the brain is in charge of organizing what you lived during the day. It decides which memories to keep, which information to discard, and how to connect the new with what you already knew. That's why, when you don't rest well, the next day you feel confused, clumsier, slower. And it's because without deep sleep, your brain doesn't file away what you lived. That's what happened to Esther. She is 70 years old, and for more than a decade she has struggled with insomnia. At first, she woke up 1 or 2 times per night. Then she had trouble falling asleep. Finally, she began to spend whole nights staring at the ceiling or sleeping in snatches with the television on so she wouldn't feel alone. For a while, she thought she could live like that. But over the years, she began to notice something more worrying. Her memory was no longer the same. She forgot basic things. She went to the kitchen and didn't remember why. She had conversations, and later, she couldn't repeat what she had said. Esther felt more and more disconnected. She didn't understand why, until a doctor explained that her problem wasn't only sleep, it was also memory, and that both were deeply connected. The brain needs complete cycles of deep sleep to function well. It's not enough to sleep 8 hours if you wake up 5 times. It's not enough to stay in bed if you don't enter that state of deep rest where the body recovers and the mind is cleansed. The good news is that improving sleep is possible, and sometimes, with small changes, great results are achieved. Esther began by putting away the phone and turning off the television at least 1 hour before bed. Instead, she read a quiet book or listened to soft music. She also began to drink a natural infusion every night: chamomile, valerian, or lavender. She set a fixed routine, going to bed and getting up at the same time, even on weekends. In a few weeks, her rest improved, and her memory too. It wasn't magic, it was consistency. Sleep doesn't just recharge the body, it also repairs the mind. And if you feel more forgetful, slower, or more distracted, perhaps what you need is not to think more, but to sleep better. Because in the darkness of rest, your memory is sorted, strengthened, and protected, living without strong emotions and new stimuli. Have you ever wondered why certain memories from your childhood remain so vivid, while you can't remember what you ate 2 days ago? The answer lies in emotion. We remember best what moves us. The mind is not a recorder that keeps everything equally. It's a filter that prioritizes what has emotional impact. A song that made you cry, a surprise that made you laugh, a moment of joy or fear. Everything that touches your heart is recorded in memory more strongly. That's why, when life becomes flat, repetitive, and without new stimuli, the brain loses that spark. Many older people fall into a routine so predictable, so monotonous, that they stop feeling real emotion. There are no surprises, no challenges, no novelties. Only days that resemble each other, as if they were living in a silent loop. And that, little by little, turns the mind off. Alfred is 75 years old. He had lived alone since his wife passed away. He spent his days in silence, watching television and walking aimlessly. His memory began to fail, not because he had a disease, but because he had lost his enthusiasm. He didn't feel excitement for anything. One day, his grandson left a guitar at his house by accident. Alfred looked at it with curiosity. He had never played an instrument, but he decided to try. He looked up videos, tried a few chords, and without realizing it, he began to practice every day. What happened next was surprising. His memory began to improve. He felt more agile, more awake, more attentive. And it wasn't because of the guitar itself. It was because of what it represented. Something new, something challenging, something that made him feel alive. When we awaken curiosity, the mind responds. When we feel joy, enthusiasm, or surprise, the brain activates. It lights up. The mistake is resigning yourself, thinking that emotion is only for the young, that at a certain age there's nothing new to discover. But that isn't true. You can learn to dance, to cook a new dish, to write your story. You can travel, even within your own city. You can take a workshop, start a project, explore something you've never done. It doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is that you don't stop feeling. Because a life without emotion is a mind that quietly shuts down. And you weren't born to live in black and white. You were born to be moved, to be surprised, and to keep lighting up your memory one day at a time. The impact of untreated negative emotions. Not everything that affects memory has to do with what you eat, how much you sleep, or whether you do mental exercises. Sometimes what erases memories the most is what hurts inside. The brain doesn't function in isolation. It's deeply connected with the heart, emotions, and what we live. And when we go through difficult moments, like a loss, deep sadness, or constant fear, the mind feels it, and it reacts. Chronic stress, silent anxiety, or untreated sadness directly affect a part of the brain called the hippocampus. That area is essential for forming and retrieving memories. But when we live under constant emotional burden, the hippocampus weakens. It literally shrinks. And that's where the lapses begin. Not because the brain fails, but because it is emotionally exhausted. Mr. Raymond lived it firsthand. He was 79 years old when he lost his wife, with whom he had shared more than 5 decades. From that moment on, something changed. He not only became quieter, but he began to forget important things: medical appointments, payments, names of close relatives. His family thought he was developing some kind of dementia, but the tests said otherwise. The doctor was clear. What Mr. Raymond had wasn't a neurological problem. It was grief. It was deep, unexpressed sadness. It was the result of months of carrying a pain he never shared. Because when the heart is tired, the mind also shuts down. And if that block isn't addressed, it can look like memory loss. But in reality, it's a defense. It's the brain's way of saying, "I can't take any more." Many older people carry emotions they never say out loud. The death of a loved one, the fear of being alone, the guilt over past decisions, the silence around a subject that still hurts. But silence doesn't heal. It only postpones the pain. That's why seeking help isn't a weakness. It's a sign of emotional intelligence. Talking with a therapist, attending a support group, writing in a journal, joining a community of people who share their stories can make the difference. The mind needs to vent. It needs relief. And when that relief comes, memories begin to flow more clearly. Just as the body needs to breathe, memory needs to heal. And healing begins by no longer keeping inside what you carry within. The greatest mistake of all, accepting decline without a fight. There's a mistake greater than all the previous ones. It's not what you eat. It's not what you stop reading. It's not sleeping poorly, nor living without emotion. It is giving up. It is saying, "It's already too late for me." It is accepting that lapses are inevitable, that the body no longer responds, that the mind cannot change. That is the most destructive mistake of all, because it takes your strength away even before you try. And we were not born to surrender without a fight. Memory doesn't disappear from one day to the next. It weakens when we stop taking care of it. But it can also recover. It can become stronger. Because the brain, even at advanced stages, has something wonderful: the ability to adapt, to regenerate, to create new connections. But for that to happen, first you must believe it's possible. Thomas is 81 years old. For months he noticed that his mind felt slower. He forgot simple things. He could no longer follow a long conversation without losing the thread. And for a time, he convinced himself it was the beginning of the end. "I'm old. There's nothing to be done," he said. But one day, his grandson gave him a notebook and a question. "Why don't you write your story?" Thomas thought about it and began to write. At first, barely 1 page. Then, each day a little more. He remembered names, streets, smells, songs. He forced himself to think, to organize ideas, to search for memories within himself. At the same time, he began to walk every day, to read the news, to call his old friends, to learn how to use his cell phone. It wasn't easy. There were days when he felt frustrated, but he kept going. After a few months, his daughter noticed something. Thomas no longer asked the same questions over and over. He no longer got lost in conversations. His memory was coming back. Not all of it, not perfectly, but much better than before. And that wasn't a coincidence. It was a choice. Because what isn't exercised is lost, but what is trained becomes stronger. Accepting decline without fighting only accelerates it. In contrast, every small step toward action, reading, talking, moving, feeling, remembering, is an act of defense against forgetfulness. The mind needs activity, the body, movement, the soul, emotion. You don't have to run marathons or study for a degree. It's enough to do something different each day, something that awakens curiosity, that pulls you out of routine, that connects you with others or with yourself. Because growing older doesn't mean going dim, it means transforming. And if you're watching this video, if you've made it this far, it's because deep down, you still haven't given up. And that, just that, is already the first step to keep going. Recovering the mind begins with a decision. We've traveled a long and necessary road. Today, we discovered that it isn't only the passage of time that affects memory. It's the small, everyday mistakes that, when repeated day after day, gradually dim that inner light that allows us to remember, connect, live. We remembered that the first mistake is believing that forgetting is normal after 65. It isn't. It's common, but it isn't natural. Then we saw the second mistake, living on automatic. A routine without challenge, without novelty, without thinking, weakens the mind as much as lack of movement weakens the body. The third, not taking care with food. Eating the same thing every day, choosing processed products, ignoring the power of what we put on the plate, affects mental clarity more than many believe. The fourth mistake, sleeping poorly. Not resting well doesn't only tire the body, it scrambles memories, confuses ideas, and leaves you the next day without mental energy. In the fifth, we talked about the lack of emotion. Life without stimuli, without curiosity, without joy, disconnects the mind from reality. And without emotion, no memory can resist. The sixth was silence. Speaking little, not sharing stories, not connecting with others, makes the mind lose agility. Because conversation is also an exercise. The seventh mistake is the most silent, not treating the emotions that hurt. Sadness, grief, chronic stress block memory. Because when the heart is wounded, the brain suffers too. And the eighth, the most serious of all, giving up. Accepting decline without trying to improve, believing there's nothing more to be done. But there's something I want you to take with you today. The mind can recover. It can grow stronger, but only if you decide to act. You don't need to do everything at once. You only need to start. With a walk, a conversation, a book, a song, one small, different decision each day. Because as long as you're alive, your mind can keep growing. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you identified with any of these mistakes? Which has been the most common in your life? Tell me in the comments. Your experience can help someone else who is going through the same thing. Thank you for making it this far. And above all, thank you for not giving up.